Today we are going to talk about cardiac cycle, and then from there on we will go to valvular heart diseases. Why do we want to talk about cardiac cycle first? Very important, because uh, cardiac cycle is what it will make us understand the heart diseases, right? In particularly valvular heart diseases. So let us start first about this. This part is also called the Vickers diagram, right? So let us look at this diagram. So firstly, look at, so what is S1, right? S1, you must have heard about S1 and S2. So from previous knowledge, we know that S1 is due to the closing of the semilunar valves. Okay, so your mitral valve closes, your pulmonary valve closes, that is S1, and S2 when your aortic valve closes, right? So what is between S1 and S2? It is systole. Okay, so you can look at from the diagram between first and second heart sound, it is systole, and thereafter from second to again to first, that is diastole. So why is it important? So let us review the diagram. So let us review the phase of systole. Here what is happening in systole? Generally we know that left ventricle will contract. So when does the contraction starts? When the mitral valve will close, right? So why is it important? So mitral valve will close so that the left ventricle blood which starts pumping, which would go totally to the aorta, right? So firstly the mitral valve will close, then the aortic valve, the pressure builds up in left ventricle, then the aortic valve will open. So the phase between mitral valve closure to aortic valve opening is called isovolumic contraction, because contraction is occurring but aortic valve hasn't opened yet. And thereafter when the enough pressure builds, the aortic valve will open, and from left ventricle all the blood will go into aorta. Okay, so this is called the ejection phase. And thereafter what will happen is the pressure will fall, aortic valve will close, then slowly again there will be relaxation, the diastole will when the aortic, we know that when the aortic valve will close, S2, that is the sound S2, and then the diastole will start, then aortic valve will, then slowly, because pressure, it is still a closed chamber, then isovolumic relaxation will start, then mitral valve will open initially, and then the blood will start again filling into the left ventricle, and finally a left atria will produce a kick, right, and mitral and all blood will flow fast from left atrium to left ventricle. So this is the cardiac cycle, and these are the sounds, right? So why is it important? So imagine there is a phase of systole where once the aortic valve, so where the left ventricle is contracting. So when there can be turbulence can be when, so left ventricle, there are two things in systole, there are two things happening. One, mitral valve has closed and then thereafter systole has started, and secondly the aortic valve has opened, right? So there can be two issues. If the mitral valve doesn't close properly, so that is regurgitation, so mitral regurgitation, and then aortic valve is not opening properly. So what is the cause? So aortic stenosis. So aorta is not improperly opened or mitral valve isn't closing properly. In diastole, what is happening is aortic valve is closing, right, and mitral valve is opening, right? So either the aortic valve is not closing properly, so that is aortic regurgitation, and mitral valve is not opening properly. Okay, so that is mitral stenosis. So aortic regurgitation and mitral stenosis are diastolic murmurs, while mitral regurgitation and aortic stenosis are systolic murmurs. What is the mnemonic to remember this? This is all logic, but you can remember this by mnemonic. Generally, diastolic murmurs are tough to remember, so this is how I remember. ARMS, ARMS. So AR, that is early diastolic, and MS is mid diastolic, right? And rest of them like MR, mitral regurgitation, aortic stenosis, these are systolic murmurs, right? mitral regurgitation is holosystolic. There are various types of systolic, but these are ARMS is a good mnemonic. Now we will start again with the specific valvular heart diseases. Okay. So let us start with the valvular heart disease now. So okay. So coming to valvular heart disease. So let us start with valvular heart disease, aortic stenosis. Now this valvular heart disease this disease is very common in elderly. Right? That what are the causes of aortic stenosis? Etiology, calcific. This is very common in elderly. What happens is aortic valve will get calcified. So and the risk factors will include hypertension and dyslipidemia. Then there can be congenital. What happens is instead of 3 cusps, the aortic valve will have only 2 cusps. So there is this combination of aortic stenosis and aortic regurgitation. So, but this is present in generally in a bit younger age group, like in around 50s, 60s. I mean, it has been present there for long because it is congenital, but it only manifests at 40, 50 years age group. Calcific aortic stenosis is very common after 70, 80 years. In fact, one of the most common causes of valvular heart disease in USA compared to India, where still mitral stenosis and rheumatic heart disease is common. So third cause in rheumatic heart disease, mitral is involved before aortic, right? Generally, and both aortic is not isolated, involved in isolation. So this is one of the, so if you have an isolated aortic disease, it is unlikely to be rheumatic. So as we heard that the calcific is most common, then congenital, then rheumatic heart disease. There are some mimickers, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, etc. But I mean these are again common, but they can be distinguished on basis of echocardiogram. So what are the clinical manifestations? Now clinical manifestations are very simple. AS, you can remember AS, ASD. For example, AS will have, that is aortic stenosis, will have angina, syncope and dyspnea. So if the patient starts having angina and if you don't treat aortic stenosis, then patient might die in 5 years. If the patient is having syncope and you don't treat aortic stenosis, patient might die in 3 years. If the patient has dyspnea and heart failure, if you don't treat, patient will die in 2 years. So this is a rough guideline. So aortic stenosis and the critical manifestation and the clinical manifestation generally start only when the aortic valve area is less than 1 centimeter square. There is also concomitant CAD. Why? Because it's a calcific disease and dyslipidemia is causing, so concomitant CAD of, that is coronary vessels also get calcified or there is a plaque. So patient will have angina because the supply is increased oxygen demand due to hypertrophy and decreased oxygen supply due to decreased coronary perfusion pressure. Why? Because the pressure, one thing is happening that the less supply is going to coronary vessels and entire body actually, and second thing is that the body left ventricle starts becoming thick. Why? Because it has to pump against a lot of pressure, high aortic, because the aortic valve is already closed. So there is hypertrophy demand and there is decreased oxygen supply. So there is angina. Syncope, again less blood will go to cerebral vessels and the blood pressure will be low. So you will have syncope. Heart failure, later on what will happen is the heart will get tired of hypertrophy and the muscles will get due to obstruction, the muscles will be ineffective to pump and later ejection fraction will fall. This disease is also associated with Van Willebrand factor disease and GI angiodysplasia. So you have, sometimes there is melena, etc. That is a syndromic association. So what are the murmurs? As I told, right, except for AR and MS, most murmurs are systolic. So here also aortic stenosis is a systolic murmur because most of the pumping is happening in the phase of, through aortic valve is happening in the phase of systole. And this, it is, since it is constricted, so there is murmur. So it is mid-systolic murmur at RUSB, right upper sternal border. So there are two areas, A1 and A2. Here it is, and the pumping is, and this is happening at right upper sternal border. It is more predominant, though it might be heard. and this is a typical harsh, high-pitched murmur which will go to your carotids. Why? Because in the direction of pumping, right ventricle, it will go to aortic arch and then go back. So it radiates to carotid. Now there's a it is a often commonly asked question that uh, how to differentiate it from hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, SCM murmur. So here the murmur so here with increase in blood volume, right, increase with blood volume, the murmur intensity it is a common this thing, right? So here if you decrease the one second, so ejection systolic ejection click is often heard after S1 and sometimes heard with bicuspid aortic wall. Okay, so what is happening here in aortic stenosis and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and mitral valve prolapse, which is a dynamic outflow obstruction. So aortic stenosis is a fixed obstruction. So if you do something that increases the blood flow in the heart, so what is happening here? Obviously the murmur it will increase, right? So it will increase with passive leg raise, while if you decrease the volume in the heart, going in the heart, venous return, so it will decrease. While in the dynamic outflow obstruction, the obstruction will increase with decreased blood flow to the heart, right? Because the less blood, then the obstruction is more in dynamic causes. While in aortic stenosis, when there is more blood, there is more gradient and the pressure is more. So this is the difference, and it is commonly asked. What is the difference? So in Valsalva, with Valsalva, the aortic stenosis murmur will decrease while SCM murmur will increase. So this is very commonly tested. So this is a question asked as how do you judge the signs of severity of the murmur? So you check it by use a late peaking murmur clinically. It is commonly a late peaking murmur or paradoxically split S2 or inaudible A2, your LV heave and sometimes S4. These are the signs of clinical signs that your aortic murmur is getting more severe. What is the definition of severe? Less than 1 centimeter square. So it is going to severe levels. On ECG, you might see LVH, left atrial enlargement, LBDB, atrial fibrillation in late stages. On X-ray, cardiomegaly, aortic valve calcification, because as I told, it is a calcific disease, post-stenotic dilatation of ascending aorta, and pulmonary congestion. On echo, you will see stenosis and the gradient, and you can calculate the aortic valve area from the gradient itself. Cardiac cath, it is why it is done in before aortic stenosis operation, because CAD is very common. Sometimes what happens is in late stage of aortic stenosis, the ejection fraction has already fallen, and since you are indirectly estimating, we use the gradient to we are using we cannot use the gradient because it is, so we do the dobutamine challenge echo. It is only used when the baseline ejection fraction is low. So these are the guidelines for severity. You need not concern yourself with that, except for few things that in severe, your aortic valve area is less than 1 centimeter square and your mean maximum jet velocity is greater than 4. That you might remember, right? And mean gradient is greater than 40. So why do we need to remember that? Because even asymptomatic severe cases need operation. You don't wait till angina, syncope and dyspnea, because earlier we operate if it is severe, we have to choose an optimal threshold. If it is severe and we operate early, so it is the best time to get surgery. So what are the indications for surgery based on symptom? If they develop, then obviously you need surgery, right? But if it is incidentally than 50% or asymptomatic and severe, then you need to do an aortic valve replacement. So what is this? So there is something called this is a open heart surgery, right? So obviously there is mortality of 2 to 3% even if you do early. But as I told you, this disease is happening only in, generally it is prevalent only in elderly, uh, particularly the calcific type. So here, it is very difficult to operate because they don't get PSC, pre-anesthetic check clearance. So here the mortality. So here we can try in recent years, 5 to 10, past 5 to 10 years. So there they do directly, just like angiography, they go and do the replacement via transcatheter. Now it is so when is it used? When if you have surgical mortality, predicted surgical mortality is high, 4 to 8%, right? So, but again, TAVR, this is not as effective as in it has to be changed a bit often. It might not be that efficient, but again, it has a very low mortality risk compared to uh, the aortic wall replacement. What if the patient is not willing for surgery? Then it is very tough. You can go give some diuretics, but you don't give nitrates, right? You have, it is a very tough balance to manage these patients. You have to avoid nitrates. You don't have to decrease preload a lot, and you have to be very careful. Use very low doses. Again, people have started doing balloon aortic valvotomy, but again, this is not very effective as a bridge to palliation. Then TAVR is very common, as I told you, for nowadays, and in I mean, your mortality is decreased in non-operative by 44%, but still there's 20% mortality in the TAVR group, right? Transcatheter group. So it is still, I mean, you can think of it as a valid measure to use in high-risk cases. And as I told, that it is used if the mortality is, and the predicted mortality is 4 to 8%, that the patient has high likelihood of dying and at operation table, then you do a TAVR instead of a conventional AVR. Coming to aortic regurgitation, as I told you, again remember AR, MS, AR, early diastolic murmurs. So here, again, valve disease most common. Here RHD is the most common rheumatic, and generally, as I told, that aortic generally happens with or along mitral in rheumatic cases. Infective endocarditis is a very common cause. Bicuspid aortic valve disease, here AR is more common than 1/3 have AS, 1/6 have AR. So this is AR, combination of AS and AR is common. Now 57% will have root disease which will cause AR. So what are these root diseases? That is, your aortic root gets dilated. So you will have, so leak occurs. So you have hypertension, aortic aneurysm. So AR is not only caused by valve, but you also have root disease, dilated root, hypertension, aortic aneurysm, dissection, aortic inflammation. So any regurgitation, firstly you have to understand, so what are the clinical manifestation? Now there's one other point, how to differentiate between stenotic and regurgitant murmurs. Stenotic will have low blood flow signs, like you have angina, you have palpitations, right? So these kind of symptoms, angina, syncope. While regurgitation, here you will have palpitations. In stenotic, okay. So in aortic regurgitation, what are the symptoms? So if the symptom is acute, then you have sudden AR is going directly, sudden regurgitation that directly going into lungs, right? The AR will shoot, go into mitral left atria. From a left ventricle, it might go, suddenly cause pulmonary edema or hypotension and shock and cardiogenic shock. It often happens in aortic dissection. However, often the AR is chronic. So where it will chronic silently dilate and LV will dilate. Okay. So natural history, it is a variable progression. It is not like AS, which has typical angina, syncope and dyspnea. So on physical examination, so what is the manifestation? Physical examination, you will have again you will have early diastolic murmur, but here remember in aortic stenosis you had at RUSB, right, upper sternal border. Here it is at left upper sternal border, and it will increase in sitting forward, and with hand grip. So the question is, how do you judge clinical manifestation severity of AR? So here duration of murmur is an important predictor. Okay. There is also something called Austin-Flint murmur. It's a functional murmur, so there might be mid to late diastolic rumble at apex. Okay, because AR jet is interfering with mitral inflow. What is happening is AR jet is going upwards and blocking the mitral wall. So it is also pseudo mitral stenosis like condition. So it is called Austin-Flint murmur. So this is very common with aortic regurgitation. So here questions are asked that this is wide pulse pressure. Why is it wide pulse pressure? Because stroke volume has increased, hyperdynamic pulse, and pulse pressure has narrowed in late AR. Okay, with decreased LV function. Okay, so the pulse pressure is wide. So and your heart will be displaced, right? Because the heart has grown larger, you are getting a lot of volume, so your heart apex has got displaced, point of maximum impulse PMI has got displaced, and there are signs of heart failure. So you have S3. Compared in AR it is S3, and aortic stenosis it is S4. Because LV has become hard here. Here it is a volume overload kind of thing. In AS it is pressure overload. In regurgitation it is always volume overload kind of heart. Hyperdynamic heart. So questions are asked that what is classical eponymous signs in chronic AR? So this is often tested, sometimes asked. Corrigan pulse, that is a water hammer pulse. You lift the hand above and rapid rise, and it hits when you bring it up, suddenly your pulse hits your hand like a hammer. It's like a toy, water hammer toy. There's a Hill's sign, your popliteal to brachial difference is greater than 60. Durossier's sign, to and fro, murmur heard over femoral artery with little light compression. Pistol shot sound, Traube sound. De Musset's, Mueller, you can remember U for uvula, Mueller sign. Quincke pulse at a quick tips, at the tips. So these are common. On ECG, again you will see LVH and LAD. As I told, difference between AS and AR predominant is AS will have a pressure heave. The wide pulse pressure will common in AR. These you will see these eponymous signs sometimes. Okay. Your pulse pressure, as I told, will be wide. Your point of maximum impulse will be dilated, shifted to left, shifted to right. In AS, the signs of angina, syncope, dyspnea are more common. And sometimes these two, and as I told, ES, AR will exist in combination. So whichever is predominant, the symptoms of that will get predominant. For example, if you are seeing a patient of AS and valvular heart disease, which is AS and AR, suppose pulse pressure is wide, so it means AR is more predominant than AS. But suppose you are seeing syncope, which is more predominant, so AS is more predominant than AR. If your pulse pressure was initially wide and now it has gone low, so here initially AR was predominant, now AS has become, aortic stenosis has become predominant. So this is the way we think about it. Now coming to echo, you can see severity of AR. Suppose the regurgitation fraction is greater than 50%. It is returning, all the blood volume is returning. So, so again it is severity of AR. Treatment in aortic stenosis, it was a chronic process. Here aortic regurgitation, as I told, can be both acute and chronic. So here acute, if as I told you, it happens in aortic dissection. Suddenly your aortic root gets dilated, you have rupture through, so it will acutely. So here you have to decrease the BP and heart rate all of a sudden. We do it generally by using nitroprusside, labetalol, right? These things. In chronic AR, here you have time, right? And here you do surgery. So in regurgitation, your obviously ejection fraction will be overestimated. Why? Because there is a lot of blood coming while regurgitation. So here you remember 50-50. That is, if your ejection fraction is less than 50 and LV systolic diameter is greater than 50 mm, so that is an indication for surgery. In aortic stenosis, what was the indication? Aortic stenosis we were doing asymptomatic severe. Severe, what was it? right? Ejection fraction less than 50%, or your mean pressure was greater than 40, or your max pressure was greater than 64 across aortic valve, right? So in aortic stenosis, you have asymptomatic and severe, or when the symptoms AS becomes symptomatic. Here in AR, you have 50-50, that is EF is less than 50 and LV dilation, that is LV in systolic diameter is greater than 50 mm or 5 centimeters. So here also TAVR is being explored, but AR is and you can give for therapy vasodilators like nifedipine, ACRB, hydralazine to decrease the afterload, right? So that there will be less AR. So you have some time to act in chronic AR, except in acute decompensation. As I also told that infective endocarditis also AR is very common, and here you have to treat infection and the valve process. Now coming to mitral regurgitation. So again we will repeat, compare. In aortic stenosis, what is common cause? Calcific, senile, then you have bicuspid, and then rheumatic. Aortic rheumatic always occurs with mitral, not in isolation. In aortic regurgitation, as we do it, that it can be either a valve disorder, right, due to rheumatic, or or it can be a root disorder. In mitral regurgitation, it's a primary disorder of either of the valve apparatus. You have leaflet abnormality, or you have coordinate tendony rupture, or papillary muscle dysfunction, right? Or secondary, that is functional, that is ischemia, or DCM, HSC. So if you have acute MR, just like acute AR, you will have pulmonary edema. Simple, because patient heart doesn't get time to compensate. So mitral regurgitation directly goes, blood goes from left ventricle directly to pulmonary, right? To pulmonary artery, okay, and again, so it is going there. Sorry, pulmonary veins, okay, and thereafter in pulmonary circulation. So acute pulmonary acute manifestation can be pulmonary edema, though this is less common. Typically you will see a chronic MR. It will again similarly like AR, it will go on regurgitation. You see a more volume is coming, okay, inside the hair. It is coming inside the left atria will get dilated, and suddenly slowly pulmonary hypertension will develop. So in MR, it's again a systolic murmur, holosystolic murmur, because the movement LV pressure is constantly high and the blood constantly moves from LV to LA during diastole, during systole, okay, systole. So okay, so it's a holosystolic murmur. There are some questions asked that if it is anterior leaflet is abnormal, so the blood will go into towards posterior jet. So posterior jet will hurt the spine, and posterior leaflet is abnormal, your anterior jet will go in front in sternum. In AR, what I told, that there was a pseudo MS, because AR jet was going and aortic regurgitation and was blocking the mitral wall also. Okay, so it was causing a pseudo MS, Austin Flint murmur. Here also diastolic rumble can be heard, but this is not happening due to some direct obstruction, but due to MR, what is happening is a lot of blood is going into LA, and since the blood has to come back from LA to LV during diastole, so it's a functional diastolic murmur, though this is less common. More common is holosystolic murmur, which you see and which will radiate to axilla. So this is commonly asked. And here carotid upstroke will be brisk compared to which is diminished and delayed in aortic stenosis. ECG, LA, left atrial enlargement, LVH. X-ray, dilated LA, LV, which will happen in most regurgitant murmurs, right? In regurgitation, your X-ray will see dilated LV both in AR and MR. Compared to in stenosis, the dilation will not be that there. Your point of maximum impulse, the apical impulse, will be shifted a lot in regurgitant murmurs as compared to AS or MS, aortic stenosis or mitral stenosis. On echo, again, you will see regurgitation happening, and you will see it on regurgitation jet. If it is severe, it goes all the way into left atria in regurgitation, almost a regurgitation fraction of 50%. that is severe, as you can see. Treatment, as I told, that acute severe MR, again here, ischemia in endocarditis, as I told, that will be precipitating. This is very common because ischemia can suddenly, infection again happens suddenly, and here you have to, like in AR, you have to decrease the afterload. How do you do? You can give nitroprusside or NTG, or you have to keep heart rate low, particularly in aortic dissection. Here, what is the operation criteria? Remember in AR, what was the operation criteria? 50-50. Here it is. Generally, we operate when if patient is asymptomatic, ejection fraction is 30 to 60, or LV systolic diameter is greater than 40. So there it was 50-50. Here it is around, we can operate LV systolic in asymptomatic if the ejection fraction is between 30 to 60 and LV systolic diameter greater than 40. We generally don't operate if the ejection fraction falls less than 30. Why? Because maximum damage has already occurred, right? So, so this is the criteria for surgery. We prefer repair over replacement. If it is secondary MR, for example, then obviously you do consider surgery if NYHA grade 3 and 4. Secondary MR, it is not due to valve disorder but due to other causes. For example, dilated cardiomyopathy, heart has got dilated, then valve is not able to fit in. Then you obviously try to fix the underlying cause and then do surgery. Sometimes you will have to fix the mitral stretch around, you will have to do annuloplasty. Generally, we prefer repair over replacement. Okay, and there are other clips and other methods for repair replacement. So here you have band, unlike AR where it was 50-50, here you have band, ejection fraction between 30 to 60%, less than 30% generally you don't operate. LV systolic diameter, here it is greater than 40, we generally decide to operate. There it was 50. Okay, so mitral valve prolapse, here it is billowing of mitral valve leaflet 2 mm above mitral annulus in parasternal long axis echosis. So there is an echocardiological definition. Basically, since mitral valve is prolapsing, so regurgitation, some amount of regurgitation is occurring, and MR is very commonly associated with MS. You will hear a click and no treatment is needed per se. Mitral stenosis is very common in Indian scenario, and here, as I told, it will be a diastolic, mid-diastolic murmur. AR early diastolic, MS mid to late mid diastolic. So causes RHD, fusion of commissure, because the mitral valve generally so your fusion of commissures will occur. Your mitral annular calcification will be taking place. Posterior mitral leaflet is fixed. On echo you will see. Sometimes happens in infective endocarditis and sometimes in valvulitis like SLE, amyloid or carcinoid. Stenotic, as I told, that here dyspnea is a very common feature, palpitation. Atrial fibrillation is very common in mitral stenosis. Very important. Why? Because mitral stenosis, the mitral valve gets blocked, so left atria above will get dilated. And because left atria, right atria in diastole, it will get dilated, and there you have the SA node fibers, right, the main pacemaker fibers. So here it will lead to impairment. So due to the dilation, atrial fibrillation is very common, and an embolic event will happen. Why? Because again the sinus rhythm has got impaired, so the rhythm will be abnormal, so you will have blood clots. It will throw out blood clots intermittently. So very important. Pulmonary manifestation will occur. Why? Because LA has got dilated, so there will be backflow, right? Then Ortner syndrome, again LA has dilated, so your recurrent laryngeal nerve will be pressed. So here you can see that many manifestations are related to dilation of left atria. There will be low pitched mid diastolic rumble at apex, which is best heard in left lateral decubitus position during expiration. This is very important. Learn the classical definition. So low pitched mid diastolic rumble at apex. So you have to you have to keep the patient if you are not able to hear because it's a low pitched murmur, so you have to make the patient lie down, turn him laterally in left lateral decubitus position, and made and tell him to expire a bit. Okay, and then when it is calm, then you will be able to hear that rumble. Alright. Here severity is not proportional to duration, and the S1 will be loud. Initially there will be opening snap from fused leaflet tips, and the mitral valve area is proportional to S2 OS interval. So tidal wall, which will lead to shorter interval. These questions are often tested. That important that to remember that S2 OS duration, shorter interval is predictive of more intensity of mitral stenosis, and the duration of murmur doesn't have to uh, deal with the severity of murmur. So what are the clinical determinants? So AF is also it is very common. On ECG you will see left atrial enlargement, X-ray dilated LA, echo again he will see a typical mitral stenosis. So here we do a valve score to see what level of calcification has occurred. Why? Because if it is not calcified, we can go and dilate it with a balloon. Right? If it is not thick, it is not calcified, if there is no clot, if there is no massive regurgitation, we can do and dilate it with a normal, normal device. But if it is a calcification occurred, then it can break out, and then we'll have to do surgery. So, okay. So, what are the classifications? So, there are various classifications of mitral stenosis. You can see on basis of severity, they are based on mean gradient and mitral valve area. Like aortic valve area stenosis, less than 1 centimeter is called very severe. So, how do we and when do we decide to treat? We have to give sodium restriction, cautious diuretics, beta blocker, AF control. So here you have to control heart rate. Why? Because diastole, if the heart rate is very fast, more so because the sinus node, the LA has become enlarged, so there is a tendency for heart to beat fast. So once we keep the heart rate slow, we give time for blood to go from LA to LV. So that is why this is very important. Diuresis, why? Because some blood has backflowed into pulmonary lungs, so we give diuresis. Antibiotics we can give. Anticoagulation, why? Because atrial fibrillation is a very common feature. So when we decide to do surgery, if mitral valve area less than 1.5 and there are some signs of heart failure like dyspnea, etc., or if there are signs of pulmonary artery pressure increase, if unexercised dyspnea is increasing, right? If it is very severe, less than 1, then obviously we decide to operate. If there is new onset of AF, atrial fibrillation, then also we decide to operate. So, and we can do a percutaneous balloon commissurotomy, right? If the valve morphology is favorable, as I told you, right? We calculate a formal valve score based on thickness, calcification, the super and substructure. So it is generally done when you don't have LA clot, when you don't have severe MR, because we go through femoral artery, we enter the right atrium, puncture the left atrium, and then go on to mitral stenosis to dilate. So if there is LA clot, you cannot do the proper dilation, or if there is severe MR, you cannot do. So except for LA, if there is no LA clot, if there is no severe MR, moderate to severe MR, if your wall is not too thick, if it is not too calcified, then we can do a balloon commissurotomy, okay, and then patient can be free of symptoms for 5-10 years, and then again it will slowly develop, but then it is a good way, and you must keep that option open. It is very frequent, has been frequently done in India. Surgical, if your PATBMC is not an option, patient is already very severe, right? So you will have to do a surgical option. In pregnancy, again we will try the balloon valvotomy first, because again here it is not an option. The valve surgery repair is all. Valve surgery will obviously have, open heart surgery will have comorbidities. Similarly for TR, tricuspid regurgitation, the carcinoid and Epstein anomaly are very common because they are going to right heart sides, pacemaker leads. TR, like tricuspid regurgitation, like mitral regurgitation, it's a holosystolic murmur. Then suppose you do an open heart surgery, you will have to implant a valve. So what are the valves? So commonly mechanical or bioprosthetic. Bioprosthetic is used in elderly because they have limited lifespan. The advantage, you don't have to you don't have to anticoagulate a lot. Mechanical, very durable, 20 to 30 years they will last, but again they are thrombogenic, so you will have to put anticoagulation. On mitral, you have to keep an INR at 2.5 to 3.5, right? And aortic, you have to take anticoagulation between 2 to 3. You can do by warfarin, and in some cases you have to use aspirin. So this is very important here, and important, warfarin. The novel oral anticoagulants don't work as well. So you will have to use, as I told, that INR has to be raised, right? Now one tricky question is when you do procedures, very important question, when you do procedure, so how do you control things, right? For example, you have to do procedure, so you cannot keep an oral anticoagulant because the effect will be long lasting. So you discontinue 2 to 4 days before surgery. You give unfractionated heparin or LMWH, okay. Okay, and then you stop 4 to 6 hours prior surgery or morning before surgery, and then you restart heparin and warfarin INR to maintain INR as soon as possible. So what happens, sometimes you will see these patients who are on anticoagulation, they bleed, they start bleeding. So if there's major bleeding, you have to see that how you have to give anticoagulation. Suppose the INR is high, 5 to 10, you have to withhold warfarin. If the INR is greater than 10, then you have to give vitamin K per oral. If there is bleeding, then you have to give FFP or 1 IV vitamin K. So this is very important. Okay. Then there are some side effects of you have to give endocarditis prophylaxis for all valvular heart disease before any surgery. Prosthetic valve, many complications can happen. Sometimes the surgery valves can fail. Sometimes the valvular leak can happen. Sometimes your flow can block due to thrombosis. Okay. Sometimes infection can happen due to endocarditis, and sometimes the bleeding and embolization can happen. So you have to take care in prosthetic valves with respect to anticoagulation, infection, structural failure, etc. Okay, I hope it helped. Thank you.